All right, so we're having an exciting technological moment, but welcome back. Delighted to speak with you. What I'm going to do in the 5 minutes or fewer that I have allocated is to talk about the place of business in all of this, and specifically big tech or Silicon Valley, and how to think about them as collaborators with what's going on right now. And Silicon Valley has this reputation of being socially liberal and being sort of this warm place. You may remember this time when young tech workers flexed their political muscle. This is about 7 to 8 years ago, where Google plans not to renew its contract with the Defense Department for AI drone technology because their employees objected to it. Salesforce employees said, we don't want to sell products to Customs and Border Protection because we believe we are responsible for the work that we do with this company and how it is used in the world. Folks at Microsoft said, we will not be war profiteers. We do not want to create goggles for AI or AR use on the battlefield. Google workers had the largest walkout in corporate history, at least for them, 20,000 workers around the world with a series of objections. And Amazon workers said, we don't want to sell Amazon Web Services to oil companies because we disagree with their contribution to climate change. And so you saw tech workers sort of feeling their power and exercising it within the company for ends that you might not have expected. So you might conclude from all of this that Silicon Valley is this very sort of socially liberal place. And one way that this sort of got realized was in the response to January 6th. So if you remember, January 6th, 2021, a big business responded fairly lethargically by saying, we're going to cut off our political contributions to anyone that did not vote to endorse the election. And so the next election was 2 years off. It was a pretty low-cal contribution to the political debate. Big tech, within 24 hours, Twitter and Facebook cut off Trump's account. Google and Apple cut off the Parler app, which had been used by the insurrectionists to organize their activities. Amazon Web Services deleted it from the face of the earth. And so, in a sense, 5 tech CEOs managed to basically stop the insurrection in its tracks and cut Trump off from his preferred methods of communicating with his people. So that was a pretty dramatic difference. And I want to argue that big tech is qualitatively very different from the rest of big business. The Fortune 500 seemed powerful, but they were nothing compared to GAFAM, the big tech companies. So that's why it's alarming to look at this picture from the inauguration 3 weeks ago and to see the CEOs of 4 of these tech companies rolled together, sitting in the front row at the inauguration, going from we are shutting down this anti-democratic insurrectionist to surprise, we're on board. And that was a pretty dramatic shift that I think the rest of us should be really anxious about. And I want to point out some of the ways in which big tech is different and arguably more powerful and more threatening than other flavors of business in their interactions with democracy. So first, big tech is both ubiquitous and highly concentrated in ways that business has never been before. So General Motors for generations was the largest corporation on earth, but people did not have a General Motors product within 18 inches of their body all day, every day, including while they slept. The pervasiveness of big tech, that is really unparalleled. We use it all the damn time and find it to be inescapable. Second, it is far more concentrated than any other flavors of business have ever been in history, arguably. GAFAM are monopolists. They make up about 25% of the S&P 500. That is unprecedented. When their price goes down, everybody who wants to retire gets very anxious. And the third thing is that they are feeling persecuted by the Biden administration. So if you look at the actions of the antitrust authorities, they vigorously pursued big tech and had lots of ideas about reining in the power of big tech. And so big tech felt very persecuted by this during the Biden administration. It's also the case that big tech is uniquely organized to evade outside accountability. Big tech does not want to answer to any form of democratic control. So one is that the people that run these things, the corporate founders, typically maintain absolute voting control. If you saw when Facebook went public, one 28-year-old college dropout controlling a multinational corporation had 60% of the voting rights and got to to select the board that oversaw him. That is not a normal thing, except in Silicon Valley. The same thing was also true of Sergey and Larry at Google. And so these companies don't have the accountability to their own investors that you might expect. They have implemented a kind of anti-ESG backlash, particularly Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Vivek Ramaswamy have led a charge against ESG, which they see as being an encroachment on their prerogatives as founders and runners of company. So they don't want to be accountable to their investors. They also no longer want to be accountable to their employees, like those examples I showed previously. So tech firms are increasingly clamping down on what they think of as political discussions within their companies. They don't want politics discussed at work. And the last thing, I love this term. You're welcome to use it. Gil Duran, the journalist, referred to them as the Nerd Reich, which I think gets things. They are clearly enthralled by an anti-democratic ideology. So I've talked about the Ayn Rand theory of corporate governance, the belief that founders are the makers and investors, employees, citizens, the rest of us, we are takers, that we need to defer to the makers who are the creative builders of this universe. And they build that into the organization of these companies. And the last thing, which is definitely worth your Googling for later, is the network state. So there is an explicit idea that post-democracy, there will be businesses providing state-like services as if they were vendors selling a product. And this is something that's commonplace in Silicon Valley and kind of anathema to those of us that want to live in a democracy. My friend Allison Stanger recently published something on the conversation, but in light of all of this, seeing Elon Musk with his hands all over the powers, the levers of government should be especially concerning because he and his friends don't believe in democracy. They think it's been a mistake, and they think that there should be deference to those who are genetically or in whatever ways superior, like the founder class. So, thank you.